How's the volume level? Can you hear me? Am I getting any audio here? Hello?
Hello?
Okay.
Hello? Okay.
Anyways. I hadn't done this kind of video before, but I just wanted to try it out, and I thought this would be a fun way to do it. So I'm showing you a deck that I made in Moxfield for Magic the Gathering. And this is Joyra, and the name of this deck is Joyra Juggles Chainsaws. And I'm just going to show you with their playtest thing. Okay, so this is a bad hand, which is always a thing that can happen because we don't have any islands. So I'm going to restart. And here we have, okay, yes, this looks this looks like a good hand. So first turn, draw a card, play an island. We don't really have anything we can do yet. We're probably not planning on doing something on turn one with this deck. We're really aiming to maximize turn two and three. Well, turn two, we're going to put Joyra. And tap our two lands and play Joyra. So here's Joyra. For a blue and a red, 2/3. Human Artificer. Tap, put two Ingenuity counters. And then you can put an artifact card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is the number of counters. So we have to wait. We have to wait till next turn to use this ability. So let's go ahead. Now we are on turn three, and we're going to tap Joyra, counter, two counters. We can play an art. It's not technically playing the artifact. We're just going to put it into play. Something that costs two or less. That could be this guy. I think that's all we've got right now. Yeah. So drop this guy into play, and we can talk about him in a minute. So that's pretty. That's we tapped her once, got two counters, and immediately dropped something for two. Next time it's going to be for four. That's something to think about, right? So there are creatures in here that you can drop them, and then they'll untap Joyra, and you can immediately tap her again to play something for four. We didn't happen to draw those this. We can't. We can use a couple of spells here to protect Joyra by giving her hexproof and untapping her, which also allows you to do the same thing. And even if you don't have an artifact to play, you can still just tap her to put the counters on. In this case, 8 is the next. This card might be a little ridiculous. It's possible I should switch it for something smaller. In this case, though, we're just going to put extra counters, and then we're going to go on to turn four. Let's think here. Can we can play a land. Let's play a land that doesn't come into play tapped. And I feel like the choice here is play Thirst for Knowledge to draw more cards, try to get more things to cast with Joyra. Or we could for sure play the Su-Chi Cave Guard this turn. So that's probably the better plan, since it's right there in front of us. But this is a great card for just digging. Sometimes we just want something that will work with Joyra. But this time, I think we're just going to tap her to go to 6 and then cast Octopus Form for a blue. Target creature gets +1/+1, gains hexproof until end of turn, untap it, tap her again, up to 8, and there's the Su-Chi Cave Guard. On turn 4. That's not the most explosive this deck gets, but that's not bad. An 8/8 on turn 4. And we still, if someone, seeing this, tries to shoot Joyra, we still have mana up and we can cast another one of these things to give her hexproof and untap her again. Maybe, that's a possibility. Let's go one more turn and just see. At this point, we can pretty much just play anything we want for free. Like we can drop this guy, who also doubles as a counterspell in a pinch. Pinch, haha, crab pinch. Anyways, we can draw more cards. I have a number of these cards like this: Traverse Eternity for 4 mana. Draw cards equal to the highest mana value among historic permanents you control. In this case, that would be 8, because that's historic permanents counts artifacts. That's the important thing you need to know for this deck. So that's not bad. We would just end up discarding most of that, so we probably don't want to do that yet. But I've got a few, like 2 or 3 cards in here that can do that kind of effect. Can also just dig with Thirst for Knowledge. Let's do that. Let's say this is a situation where we just feel like we've got a few resources for sure, but we wanna expand our options. So let's play Thirst for Knowledge. Ooh, do you leave up the? I think you leave up the island, but that's an interesting choice. Draw 3 cards. 2, 3. Discard 2 cards or discard an artifact. I probably want the artifact. Oh, that land is an artifact, so that works. There you go. Good use. That's a good use for an artifact land later on. So that got us this card, which can do 5 damage when it enters to target creature, which is a good option to have. Let's say we want to do that. Bang, hit something for 5. I also like that Joyra is a 2/3, so she can crew this boat by herself. That's the kind of thing I think about is, can my commander drive this vehicle? Because right now you do reach a point at some point where it's like, I've done all this ridiculous stuff and I don't have anything else artifact wise to do. So why not have Joyra drive a boat? It could happen. Mostly it's here for the surprise 5 damage, but it is also a thing. Before I want to do another test game, but before that, I just want to talk about this guy for a second, this Surge Engine, which I didn't realize the name was a pun until I said it out loud. 2 mana for a 3/2 defender. It's an artifact creature. It's a construct. It's just a card that has come up multiple times for me in decks. Like if you're making a construct deck, here's a construct that's pretty good. And what I like about this card is that there's a lot of different modes that you can pay increasingly more mana for, but the card by itself. So it's a 2 mana 3/2 with Defender, and you can pay 1 mana to remove Defender, and instead have that the creature that it's just unblockable. Right? You turn off Defender and you turn on Can't Be Defended Against. That's like so like useful as a baseline creature, like just something that's hitting people for 3. Like that can matter. And it's a construct and it's an artifact. And you can make it bigger. You can draw cards off of it one time. That's very expensive, but that's all like upside. So anyways, Moving on. Let's try another. Like at this point, hopefully we don't have trample. There's ways in this deck of getting trample. In order to finish out this game, like we're hoping that this guy is just going to smash people, basically. And then we'll have to dig for more stuff, right? If it comes to it, if this isn't enough to win, if there's a board wipe or whatever, we're gonna cast. Well, if all our artifacts is just destroyed, this will be a lot less effective. But depending on the situation, we're gonna try to draw more cards if need be. But let's start a new game and see if we get. Um, this is another one with ridiculously expensive. I should have fewer expensive cards, but they're the most fun part. So I want them. Let's try another hand. Okay. Okay. Crashing Drawbridge. How good is this card? Crashing Drawbridge. It's not gonna matter this game. Immediately. But it's a wall that gives your creatures haste. All your creatures haste. It does that every turn. Anyways, so yeah, again, we're gonna play an island, and I didn't draw a card. Okay, so then we go on to turn 2, play a mountain. Here is Joyra. As per usual. And then we go to our third turn. And now here was the thing that really was the inspiration for this whole deck, was doing the math on this part. So we are on turn 3. We haven't played a land yet. Tap Joyra, put 2 counters. Counter. And we're going to put down a mana rock. Now we've got. This is what we would have had if we'd played the mana rock on turn 2. We would have had this turn, these lands, the rock, and an additional land. And Joyra, assuming that this rock comes in untapped, a lot of them, like Sky Diamond, comes into play tapped, and that wouldn't apply in quite the same way. But you see what I mean? Joyra has skipped us ahead so that we got this mana rock into play off the 2 mana we played for her. Now it's turn 3 and we've got 4 mana. And it's like, what do you want to do now? You want to play Traxos Scourge of Krug? It was a 7/7. We can play another rock, which is usually a good move. And then we could play. So for example, we could tap. We have 4 mana. We could tap 2 to play Izzet Signet, and then we'd have 3, which we could play the Master of Ethereum, giving artifact creatures +1/+1. That's a route we could go. We can play. We can just put Traxos out and see what happens. Let's go that route. So tap all our mana, play Traxos, Scourge of Krug, who is a 7/7. But he enters tapped. He doesn't untap, except when you cast a historic spell, which artifacts. In this case, I don't think there's any legendary creatures in this deck that aren't artifacts. But anyway, so basically, whenever you cast an artifact, this guy untaps. Okay, so and we spent all our mana doing that. Next turn. Didn't draw land. Probably doesn't matter at this point, though. Once you get to this point, it's like, whoa. Okay, so we're tapping. First of all, we're tapping Joyra. Counters are up to 4 now. We can put the Master of Ethereum down. We can put another free mana rock. That's pretty good. We can put the Crashing Drawbridge. We also have Chainsaw. And this is why the name of this deck is Joyra Juggles Chainsaws, is because you can, if your Joyra is untapped, you can threaten to throw a chainsaw at something at instant speed. When Chainsaw enters, it deals 3 damage. So it's like, surprise. lightning bolt chainsaw. After that, it's like not a great equipment, but like we're doing this for the 3 damage up front, and because it's funny to surprise kill something with a chainsaw, shoot down some elf with a chainsaw. So that's a thing that we could do. Like if we want to remove a blocker, we could do that. Oh, let's make sure and remember he's tapped. He doesn't untap during our untap step. Um, this doesn't count. Using Joyra doesn't count as casting a spell. You're just putting it directly into play. So we do need to think about that. Let's just decide on something to do. We've got all this stuff we could do. We could put down another mana and then play the Darksteel Juggernaut. That's not a bad plan. We could put down the Master of Ethereum. Let's just decide on that. Is that the best? There's a lot of math here that you could do to work out like what's the ideal situation. And a lot of times it's like we're going pretty aggro here. So do we want to get the Darksteel Juggernaut online, or do we want to play the Drawbridge? The thing is, if we play the Master of Ethereum and the Drawbridge, then we can give the Juggernaut haste next turn, right? Which is when it would be attacking anyways. So I think that's where we want to drop the Master into play off Joyra, and then we're going to play the Signet, and Crashing Drawbridge. And we still have a mana up. We didn't draw any of our 1 mana hexproof spells this game, but that's something we would want to threaten to be able to do sometimes. In this case, the threat would be hollow, but sometimes the threat is enough, to affect the game. Now, on this turn, we're dropping... Yeah, let's go ahead and... where did my counters go? We're up to 6. We can drop the Darksteel Juggernaut, which is power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you can control, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a 6/6 indestructible. Haste, thanks to the Crashing Drawbridge. So yeah, there's that. I forgot to talk about attacking with Traxos, because you just have to make sure to cast an artifact spell. So in this case, like we could play the chainsaw, hit something for 3 to stop it from blocking, and we're going to attack with all our hasty artifact dudes, which these guys are both power toughness equal to number of artifacts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's a 7/7, a 7/7, and a 7/7. This one's trample. They're all attacking. I don't think this is gonna matter. Yeah, that costs 3 to equip. So wait, I could. It would only be for +1/+0, but for argument's sake, we could do 1, 2, 3. Assume that the chainsaw killed something, and then we could equip it onto Traxos since he has trample, just for another point of trample damage. Yeah, and so again, hopefully that's enough. And if everything gets wiped out, we're going to draw cards. Let's just see what that would look like. Okay, we've got a random counterspell here. So at this point, I would play the Thirst for Discovery, draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards. That's annoying. We probably don't. Yeah, it would depend on the situation, right? But it would depend on like what the board state is, which you would choose here. If you still have all of these artifacts, we could cast one with the machine and draw a whole bunch more cards, which would then we could just start all over again. As long as we can draw cards and get Joyra out, And for a commander, Joyra is really cheap. She has two for the second time. That's reasonable for what she does. At six, you probably don't need to bother, but you still could. You could still, if it was, the choice you were left with, you could go that route and she would still have a strong effect on the game. So, yeah, anyways, I just wanted to share that. And it occurred to me that this interface is a pretty good way to do that. And what was I going to say? Yeah, just that this is a cool deck that I designed. I think is really fun. Um, and unlike a lot of decks I have, I feel like this one has a lot of versatility. Like I tend to make decks where it's like, okay, the combo works, but there's no removal and no counter spells. But I was really happy to realize there's three different cards that untap a creature and give it hexproof, a creature you control. They all do exactly the same thing. And that's exactly what we want. We want something as cheap as possible, so we're going to have the mana ready to use it. The fact that it protects her and untaps her is just so sweet. It feels so good when you pull that off. um, I guess Arcane Denial is the only counterspell I put in here. I don't love Arcane Denial. I think it's fine as a multiplayer, like a casual game. I think it's fine. It's a little easier to cast. Memory Lapse is usually better, or even Urtai's Meddling is surprisingly effective sometimes. Anyways, that's a tangent. Soul Talisman. Normally you have to wait three turns for the suspend, but Joyra can just put it into play for free. That's not bad. It's just an extra soul ring that Joyra has to play. I probably would never suspend it because it's going to take longer to show up than if you just drop it into play with Joyra on turn three. So yeah, basically, this is just a soul ring that costs you tapping your commander. We got usual thing that I need to remember that art exists for Arcane Signet because that is probably the best looking one. Is that's Ether Drift, right? I notice things like that, like, ooh, that's a nice soul ring. That's a nice Arcane Signet. Um, and in this case, sometimes I like to go the route of doing lots of alternate art and weird borders and stuff. I like to get fancy, and like Joyra, for example, has a really nice one. I really like the design, how this one looks, the stained glass. But in this case, I I I think it works best if it's just the normal modern Magic designs. We've got some of the universes beyond, but whatever. I like a uniform look, and some decks I think like a really crunchy game mechanicy kind of deck like this. I like it to just be like no frills. Here's all the cards. Oh, we didn't talk about Sting the Glinting Dagger, which Joyra can drop. And you can immediately tap your mana to equip to her, and then she untaps during everybody's uh combat. If they go to combat, you'll get to untap Joyra again and put two more counters on her, right? That's like hilarious when you pull that off, right? And that's a two-card combo with your commander, so that happens decently often. If you have this in your opening hand, you just you just go nuts with it. um, I've opted for some things like Hedron Archive. I don't usually like Hedron Archive. They put it in a lot of these commander decks, and it serves two really important purposes, which is getting you to a higher amount of mana. In this case, from four to six, right? Like getting you into the high numbers of mana. um, and also drawing cards. And in this case, I'm like I probably wouldn't pay the 4 mana for it. I would tap Joyra when she's got 4 counters, right, which is pretty fast, as you noticed from the playtests. That happens pretty quickly. And it's another Soul Ring. And if you don't need another Soul Ring, which, maybe you've already got two, maybe you don't need another Soul Ring. You can just sacrifice it and draw cards. So yeah, I have some cards in here. Nevinyrral's Disc is just always a great fallback plan. Like, you hope you don't play it because it hurts you. It destroys all your stuff. It's not like a combo. It's removal. But it's one of my. I'm sure they've made better cards by now, but to me, this is one of those cards that has just always been my favorite fallback plan. We used to call it the button. If your Nevinyrral's Disc is untapped, you had your finger on the button, and the 1 mana to play it. That was having your finger on the button. In the old days when I was playing the game, like back in high school. Phyrexian Processor. This card, okay, pay any amount of life when it enters the battlefield. You got 40 life in a commander game. So what's the right amount of life? You probably don't want to pay 20 life immediately and put it on this artifact that someone can then disenchant, right? You probably don't want to do that. A 20/20 would kill someone in 2 swings. But how about 3? How about 13? Pay 13 life. And then this thing taps to make 13 13s. And here's the thing. Whoops, sorry. I was trying to gesture. I'll let you look at the card. If you're not paying 4 mana for this artifact, if you're dropping it in play for free, and then paying any amount of life, perhaps 13. I would say you probably don't do 13 either, but I feel like that's the max because 14 still is going to take probably a 14/14, a 15/15 are going to take 13 hits to kill somebody, right? And that's not always what matters. And you're like, this is just how I'm choosing to rationalize that choice. I feel like 13 is the meaningful maximum, barring some weird scenario, right? Like you need to block a non-flying Emrakul, so you need a 16/16 or something, right? You pay 0 mana, you pay some amount of life, and now you can tap 4 mana and tap it and immediately make some huge monster. The only flaw is that the token is not an artifact, and that means it doesn't combo with some of the other stuff. So that's a little disappointing, but otherwise, what a hilarious card to play with Joyra. You saw the ship that does 5 damage. Possession Engine is a ray of command effect. It steals something temporarily. um, well, you steal it for as long as you control the vehicle, and presumably you steal something that can drive the vehicle. It has at least 3 power. Like, you don't have to, but that's probably what you're gonna do. Um, yeah, it's kind of a silly card. In both these cases, the ship and the possession engine, there's probably a card. I could probably find a card for 4 mana that would do a similar job and would work out better most of the time. I don't think it would be as funny as throwing a boat at them or possessing their creature with a car. So that's why those are here, even though they cost an odd number amount of mana and therefore are not. I did think about, by the way, I play tested, like, would it work to do things with proliferate where you would add because the only reason you would add 1 counter and be on odd numbers on Joyra would be if you had a proliferate effect that would add 1 counter, or something similar. There's a creature that does, like, it's not proliferate, but it does a similar thing. Anyways, um, Yeah. So would it be worth playing with things like that? For example, I have a deck. I have a mono blue deck that's Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel, I think is the name of the card. He's a 2/1 flyer, and you want to put counters on him in order to do stuff. So I have a whole bunch of proliferate stuff in that deck where it's just there to make people realize too late that the clock had just the clock struck 12 way before they thought it was going to. If you know what I mean. I'm not sure I know what I mean. But anyways, I did try doing a thing like that, but the problem with that is then you were putting in cards with the specific plan of having added another counter, and it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the amount of planning, like the space it would take in the deck, versus just planning everything around twos, fours, sixes, with some exceptions. In this case, we're kind of counting these as sixes, like they take as long for Joyra to put out. But anyways, oh, and also Pinnacle Kill Ship does 10 damage to something, which is hilarious. The fact that it can't hit players probably means that this is not worth it, but I think it's funny enough to be worthwhile. Coveted Jewel, I think is such a great, like, if you want to have fun games more than you want to like win. And the thing is, Coveted Jewel is a good card. It just has this risk where you're going to give your opponent, the avenue to also profit from it. But on its own, for what it does up front, it's pretty crazy. It gives you 3 mana. It draws you 3 cards. That's a lot for something to do for 6 mana. And the fact that it has that, see, this is where I think it is good game design if your evil scheme has a way built in that it can be thwarted, right? This is my like philosophy of making decks, especially commander decks, which are a little more I don't know, like improv-y. They're a little more like I'm playing a character and being silly and having fun with my stupid cards and my friends and whatever. So, and Coveted Jewel is one of those cards that does that. That is, here is me claiming power, but also giving you, I'm leaving you strapped to the interrogation platform, assuming that you will die while I go off screen to talk to the UN or whatever. Okay, we could probably just take a look at the creatures here real quick. Here's these card drawing effects, one with the machine, Traverse Eternity. Um, Thirst for Discovery, Thirst for Knowledge. I like all there's 4 cards. Thirst cards, that sounds funny, but that ideally you discard a different thing to each one. I like them all. In this case, I only needed 2, and I could probably find something cheaper even then, but they're just really solid, fair card drawing that digs you pretty deep. So yeah, I like these, and they're cheap, which matters. Um, Bomat Curry, I'm not sure about this card. I feel like this is a card that's better in 60 card formats where you can really plan your game around it, because it can draw you a new hand, but it has to. I don't know. I'm not sure. I kind of like when you can play it on turn one and just have some cards stashed away for the rest of the game. I do like that. It's a card that I would think about if a new card got printed that I was like, ooh, I want that in my Joyride deck. This is one of the ones I would think about cutting. Rabbit Battery gives haste. Most of the haste stuff is not going to come down quickly enough to give Joyra haste, because you would need to, right? Like the battery, you can play Rabbit Battery turn one, Joyra turn two, but then you don't have the mana to equip it and give her haste, and then it's turn three and it doesn't matter, right? So I did not see, like, maybe with crazy, Moxes and whatever, there's a way to have the, well, I don't need that hypothetical. Soul Ring would help. If we played Soul Ring turn one, then we could, first turn Soul Ring, and where's the drawbridge? Crashing Drawbridge. It's in there somewhere. There we go. Um, yeah, in that case, we could do it. Soul Ring is a stupid card, but yes, it's feasible, but it's not part of the plan. If you see the distinction there, the haste is for later on when you're dropping big threats into play. They come out early. They count as artifacts, so you'll draw more cards, and you can play them out quickly as well. There's a mix in this deck of things that can like rapidly, fill the board versus things that come down and like Corridor Monitor, for example, here is specifically is here so Joyra can untap herself on turn 3, and you've got another artifact, and then it's just kind of a handy blocker, and it ups your artifact count, which can matter. I didn't go down the affinity path too much in here, but we do have the one dragon, wherever it is, Furnace Hellkite. This guy that gives your artifact creatures melee, trample, and haste. This is a weird card. Um, it's awkward. 7 is an awkward number for this deck. That's another one that I would think about change. But giving all your artifact creatures melee and trample as well as haste is pretty good. Cyberman Squadron is a stupid card. I already have one because I got all the Doctor Who decks. Otherwise, I usually don't plan on putting things that cost that much in very many of my deck. Like here's one, Mystic Forge is a $3 card. Like that's an important card in this deck. I could play more cards like it, but those then it starts to get more expensive. This is already over $100 as is, but like, theoretically. Cyberdrive Awakener is another card where it was worth a few dollars because it gives you wins basically. It lets you clear the board, give your guys flying. Um, the best, most unfortunately named card in the game, Sharding Sphinx, is another one that can give you the like inevitability. Steel Hellkite's always a goodie. Yeah. Oh, this guy, Blaster Hulk. This is one. He's an 8/8 with haste. If they've got a chump blocker, that's not that good. But this is here to just be like, okay, I've put all these counters on Joyra. What do I do now? How about an 8/8 with haste? And if it stays on the board long enough, if it doesn't get disenchanted or whatever, shatter stormed, um, eventually it can do damage to stuff, which I'm not like expecting that's going to happen, but if it did, that would be cool. Not going to complain. Threefold Thunder Hulk, which is fun to say, is one of those cards where you have to like read it 5 times before you're like, wait, that's good. You get a 3/3, and when it enters, you immediately get 3/1/1 gnomes. And then you can also sacrifice artifacts to make the Hulk bigger, and then he'll make more gnomes. So yeah, anyways, if you ever read this card and went, what? The answer is it's good. If you can, I mean, it's really good if you can play it for free. um, I feel like I don't have enough experience yet playing Ruin Grinder. I like it theoretically here because it's kind of medium size as far as this deck thinks about it. Your third activation of Joyra can drop this 7/4 with Menace, which is not nothing. Um, like the 4 toughness isn't great, but then it has this everyone discards their hands and draw 7 cards like trigger. That's just it's kind of a, I'm not sure what that would accomplish, but it might help me. Maybe I would need that to happen. Uh, and then the mountain cycling though is the thing. Um, we hope we're never in a situation where we really need to trade that in for a mountain, but it happens. And sometimes it's the second mountain that you need. Maybe you had in your opening hand a mountain and an island, you just didn't draw anymore. It does come in handy to be able to go grab one. So yeah, that's another card that could be something cooler. But I kind of like these like weird in between role players. Like it's getting you land and it's presenting threats. Maybe it's drawing you cards. I like the versatility of that. Oh, Combustible Gear Hulk. This is the one where your opponent can, you get a 6/6 for 6 first strike, and when it enters, your opponent has to choose. Um, Either you draw 3 cards, which is good, or you mill 3 cards instead. You put those 3 cards in your graveyard and you count up the mana value, and it does that much damage to the player choosing. So it's either you draw the 3 cards or the 3 cards hit you, right? I don't think there's any realistic scenario where you don't take the damage. 3 cards is too good. Um, but yeah, there's gonna be times in this deck where that choice is gonna be really interesting, and it creates a great suspense, moment in the game, which I think is great. Um, Here's another one of my like magic deck design philosophy things. If a card has like all these steps and instructions like that, like this, the whole table should be waiting in suspense to see what happens. It shouldn't be, like my guy, like in order to untap my elf, I have to return a forest to my hand, right? Which might matter at some point, in a combo down the line. You know, there's cards, and some of those cards I love, you know, but you have to be careful how much complexity you put into your commander decks because it can get out of hand. Some of those precon decks, they're a good product. I think they're the best, like maybe the best Magic product of all time in terms of like here's just a cool Magic deck to play. Those commander decks, in general. But some of them are so complicated. You'll have like 5 different cards out that are like, put a counter on this, take a counter off of that, turn all elves to 13 degrees to the right. And it's like, what is even happening? But that said, they don't always have a lot of like good choices when they make those decks as far as like specific cards they're going to put in them. I don't know. Solemn Simulacrum was good. Get a land, draw a card. Filigree Attendant's a pretty good. You got a lot of artifacts. He's a threat. Unctus is always funny. He does all this crazy stuff. You're drawing cards and discarding cards. Whenever you use Joyra, you also draw a card and discard a card. That's weird. I feel like this guy. It would be an interesting like partner deck, Joyra and Unctus. If you were doing this all the time, you could get a whole bunch of weird combos going. But still, it's an interesting card. Yeah, and like baseline, he gives all your artifact creatures +1/+1. So yeah, not bad. Shambling Suit is another scaling thing. I've leaned on those cards in this deck a lot because I want them to be cheap but come down and like present as this horde, right? That's how we're gonna win is artifact creatures +1/+1, artifact creatures +1/+1. Oh, reality chip is, oh man, that card's getting expensive. I feel like I bought 2 of those. If I remember correctly, I paid like 50 cents for the one pictured, and I paid like $1. Me, I don't know. Maybe it was more. Maybe it was like $1 and $2 for the extended border one. Yeah. Anyways, sometimes cards get more expensive. Yeah, Reality Chip does another Mystic Forge type effect. There's other options for that too. Reality Chip is a pretty good one. It comes down early. It's a nice thing you can just throw out a 0/4 wall and then start playing cards off the top of your deck for some reason. Steel Overseer is always funny. Steel Overseer is probably the only guy that you're ever going to play your hexproof untap effects, your octopus forms, to untap him and put counters on your artifact creatures. Ornithopter of Paradise, if you're not playing this card, this is a great card. Like if you're full of money, you could be playing Birds of Paradise, but Ornithopter of Paradise can go in any deck. Um, it's not an arcane signet because you can't tap it for mana the turn it comes out, but it's a 0/2 flying. That's crazy. Crashing Drawbridge is amazing. I don't know what else to say. Haste is good. You know why this is a great commander card? Because a lot of commanders you want to give haste immediately. And if your commander costs 3 or more, then Crashing Drawbridge does that job, right? In this deck, unless we get something unlikely with a Soul Ring, we're probably not going to be able to give Joyra haste, but we're going to give everything else haste after that. Assaultron Dominator, I'm trying out. I'm not sure. It might be a little too complicated for what it does, but it can get bigger. It can get first strike or trample, or it can give other creatures first strike or trample. So it's interesting. I feel I like the fact that it could put trample on like a Master of Ethereum or something. Like that's pretty interesting. But I haven't played with it a lot yet. Anyways, that's probably enough babbling about this nerd shit. I've got a sideboard over here, but who cares? Memory Lapse is a good card. Talisman of Creativity. Speaking of cards that are getting expensive, man, 550 for that? Oof. At least the lands are still cheap. Oh, I've got some weird ones in here. I guess we didn't really talk about. Like, that's not good. Peculiar Lighthouse is a funny land name, and I like the art. It's not a good land, but yeah, whatever. Um, I think I want to say when I don't think I actually put a Peculiar Lighthouse in this deck. I think that's only on the online. I just never changed it online. I'm not sure if I put Restless Spire either. Anyways, has this been entertaining? Only you may decide, dear viewer. Um, but this is a thing, and thanks for listening.